The vast expanse of the Milky Way had long been home to a thriving interstellar community. Hundreds of species, each with their own unique biology and culture, had formed a loose confederation known as the Galactic Concord. For millennia, they had explored, traded, and occasionally squabbled amongst themselves, but nothing could have prepared them for the arrival of humanity. On the fringes of Concord space, a small research outpost orbited a nondescript gas giant. The station was home to a team of Zicteri scientists, insectoid beings known for their analytical minds and aloofness. Lead researcher Zelmak stood before a bank of holographic displays, his compound eyes taking in a flood of data from long-range sensors. "Anomaly detected in Sector 7 Gamma," chirped his assistant, Vixla. "Unknown energy signature." Zelmak's antennae twitched with irritation. Probably another faulty reading. "Run a diagnostic." But before Vixla could comply, alarms blared throughout the station. The holographic displays flickered and resolved into an image that made Zelmak's exoskeleton tingle with a mix of fear and excitement. A ship had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Its design was unlike anything in Concord records. All sleek lines and gleaming metal, with pulsing blue engines that defied known physics. "By the Great Hive," Zelmak whispered. "First contact." Within hours, news of the encounter spread across Concord channels. The newcomers called themselves humans, and they came not with a single ship, but with a small fleet. They spoke of faster-than-light travel achieved through something called warp drive, a concept that sent Concord scientists into a frenzy of speculation and disbelief. As diplomatic channels opened, the Galactic Concord found itself facing a species that defied easy categorization. Humans were adaptable, curious, and alarmingly quick to learn. They eagerly absorbed new technologies and ideas, often improving upon them in ways that left Concord engineers baffled. Amidst the flurry of cultural and scientific exchanges, Zelmak found himself assigned as a liaison to the human delegation. He met with their lead diplomat, a woman named Dr. Samantha Chen, in a specially prepared chamber on a neutral space station. Dr. Chen smiled warmly as she entered, a gesture that Zelmak found oddly disconcerting. "Thank you for meeting with me, Research Lead Zelmak," she said, her words translated by a small device at her throat. Zelmak's antennae dipped in a formal greeting. "The honor is mine, Dr. Chen. I must admit, your species has caused quite a stir in the Concord." "I hope it's a good kind of stir," Chen replied with a chuckle. Zelmak tilted his head, unsure how to respond to the human's levity. "That remains to be seen. Your technology, particularly this warp drive, has upended many of our scientific principles." Chen's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh, we'd be more than happy to share our research. We believe in open scientific collaboration." "How strange," Zelmak mused. "In the Concord, technological advantages are closely guarded. It provides balance and prevents any one species from dominating others." Chen's expression grew serious. "We understand the need for caution, but humanity has learned that progress is fastest when knowledge is shared. We hope to learn as much from you as you might from us." As the meeting continued, Zelmak found himself both impressed and unnerved by the human's quick wit and adaptability. She asked probing questions about Concord politics, technology, and culture, absorbing information at a rate that the Zicteri researcher found almost frightening. In the weeks that followed, similar scenes played out across Concord space. Human diplomats and scientists eagerly engaged with dozens of species, forming connections and exchanging ideas at a pace that left many in the Concord feeling overwhelmed. Not everyone viewed the newcomers with optimism. In the halls of the Concord High Council, voices of concern grew louder with each passing day. High Counselor Drek of the militant Vok-Thor species pounded his fist on the conference table. "These humans are a threat to the very foundation of our society. They share technology freely, with no regard for the careful balance we have maintained for eons." Archivist Lorena of the ethereal Etheri tried to calm her colleague. "But think of the advancements we could make with their knowledge. Their warp drive alone could revolutionize travel and trade throughout the Concord. At what cost? Drek growled. They've been here mere months, and already they're forming alliances, setting up trade routes. They're spreading through our space like a virus. The debate raged on, with the council split between those who saw opportunity in humanity's arrival and those who feared the changes they would bring. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human government grappled with the enormity of their new place in the galaxy. President Adebayo addressed a special session of the United Nations, his voice ringing out to billions of listeners across the planet and beyond. "We stand at a crossroads unlike any in human history," he declared. "The galaxy has opened up to us, filled with wonders and potential new friends. But we must proceed with wisdom and caution. The species of the Galactic Concord have achieved great things, and we have much to learn from them. Yet we must also stay true to the spirit of innovation and cooperation that has brought humanity this far." As Adebayo spoke, tensions were rising on the fringes of human and Concord space. A human mining operation in an unclaimed system had come into conflict with a Vok-Thor patrol, each side claiming rights to a mineral-rich asteroid belt. Captain Elena Torres of the UES Horizon found herself facing down 3 Vok-Thor warships, their weapons primed. "This is a legally sanctioned operation," she broadcast. "We have no quarrel with you." The Vok-Thor commander's harsh voice crackled over the comm. "You have no authority here, human. Leave immediately or face the consequences." Torres gritted her teeth, weighing her options. A firefight could spark an interstellar incident, but backing down might be seen as a sign of weakness. She needed a solution that would diffuse the situation without losing face. Inspiration struck. "Commander," she said, her voice calm and steady, "I propose a challenge. Our sensors indicate rich deposits of rare earth elements in the largest asteroid of this belt. I bet we can extract more usable ore in 1 hour than your ships can. If we win, we stay. If you win, we'll leave peacefully." There was a long pause before the Vok-Thor commander responded. "You would risk your claim on a contest of skill. Interesting. We accept." What followed was a remarkable display of human ingenuity. While the Vok-Thor used traditional mining beams to slowly carve away at the asteroid, Torres directed her crew to deploy a swarm of automated drones. The tiny machines worked in concert, using precise lasers to extract only the most valuable minerals with minimal waste. As the hour drew to a close, the results were clear. The human operation had extracted nearly twice the valuable ore of the Vok-Thor ships. The Vok-Thor commander's voice held a note of grudging respect when he hailed the horizon. "It seems we underestimated you, Captain. Your methods are unorthodox, but effective. You may continue your operation." News of the asteroid belt challenge spread quickly through both human and Concord channels. For some, it was a sign of humanity's potential to bring fresh ideas and techniques to the galactic community. For others, it was a warning of the disruption these newcomers could cause to long-established norms. As the first year of humanity's presence in the galactic community drew to a close, both humans and the species of the Concord found themselves reevaluating their places in the cosmos. Old certainties were being challenged, new alliances were forming, and the balance of power was shifting in ways no one had anticipated. But even as debates raged and tensions simmered, a greater threat was stirring in the dark spaces between the stars, a danger that would soon force humans and the Concord species to set aside their differences or face annihilation. In a remote sector of space, far from the bustle of Concord trading hubs and human outposts, a lone scout ship drifted silently. Its crew, a mixture of humans and Aetheri, had been tasked with mapping unexplored regions beyond known space. Sensor operator Kai Yoshida frowned at his readouts. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange energy fluctuations, unlike anything in our database." Captain Lyra, her translucent Aetheri form shimmering with concern, glided to Kai's station. "Can you pinpoint the source?" Before Kai could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as a massive shape emerged from the darkness of space, its surface crawling with eldritch energies that defied description. "By the cosmic winds," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. "What is that?" As the monstrous entity drew closer, its true scale became apparent. It was no ship, but a living thing, larger than some moons. And it was not alone. Behind it, more shapes were emerging from the void. Kai's fingers flew over his console, initiating emergency warp. "We need to warn." His words were cut off as a beam of coruscating energy lanced out from the lead entity, enveloping the scout ship. In an instant, the vessel and its crew were gone, leaving no trace behind. The threat that would reshape the galaxy had arrived, and neither humanity nor the Galactic Concord were prepared for what was to come. The Galactic Crisis emerges. The disappearance of the joint human-aethery scout ship sent shockwaves through both Earth and the Galactic Concord. As days turned to weeks with no sign of the missing vessel, tensions began to rise. Accusations flew between species, with some Concord members suggesting that the humans had somehow sabotaged the mission, while others whispered that the aethery had betrayed their new allies. In the midst of this growing storm, an emergency session of the Concord High Council was called. Representatives from all major species gathered in the grand chamber on the neutral world of Harmonium, their faces grim as they took their seats. The human ambassador, Dr. Samantha Chen, found herself at the center of attention as she entered, flanked by her advisors. High Counselor Drek of the Vokthor was the first to speak, his voice booming through the chamber. "We demand answers, human. What have you done with our people?" Dr. Chen stood tall, her voice steady as she addressed the assembly. "Ambassador Drek, I assure you that we are as concerned about the missing ship as you are. They were our people too. We've launched our own search efforts and are willing to share all data we've gathered." Archivist Lorena of the Aethery floated forward, her ethereal form rippling with distress. "Please, let us not jump to accusations. We must work together to uncover the truth." As the debate raged on, a commotion at the chamber's entrance drew all eyes. A disheveled Zicteri burst in, waving a data crystal frantically. "Counselors, we've received a transmission from the missing ship." The chamber fell silent as the Zicteri technician inserted the crystal into a central projector. A holographic image flickered to life, showing the interior of the scout ship's bridge. The image was distorted, filled with static, but the fear on the faces of the crew was clear. Captain Lyra's translucent form shimmered with tension as she spoke. "This is Captain Lyra of the exploration vessel Stargazer. We've encountered something, a threat unlike anything we've ever seen. Massive entities, seemingly alive, with technology far beyond our understanding. They've destroyed 3 Concord outposts already. We're transmitting all sensor data we've gathered. You must prepare. They're coming, and I fear neither humanity nor the Concord is ready for what?" The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, chaos erupted as counselors began shouting over one another, demands for action mixing with cries of disbelief. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the din. "Counselors, please, we don't have time for bickering. If this threat is real, and I believe it is, we need to act now. Humanity stands ready to join forces with the Concord to face this danger." High Counselor Drek scoffed. "And why should we trust you? For all we know, this could be an elaborate human trick to gain access to our military secrets." "Because," Chen replied firmly, "we're all in this together. Whatever these entities are, they're a threat to all sapient life. We can stand together, or we can fall divided." As the council debated, the threat was already making its presence known across the galaxy. Reports began flooding in from the outer reaches of Concord space, entire colonies going dark, strange energy signatures detected near major trade routes, and sightings of massive otherworldly shapes moving through the void. On Earth, the United Nations Space Command was mobilizing for war. Fleet Admiral Kira Yoshida stood before a holographic display of the galaxy, her face etched with concern as she addressed her staff. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing an unprecedented threat. These entities, we're calling them cosmic horrors for now, have technology that makes ours look primitive. But humanity has faced long odds before, and we've always found a way to prevail." A young officer raised his hand. "Admiral, how can we fight an enemy we barely understand?" Yoshida's eyes gleamed with determination. "The same way we've always done it, with courage, ingenuity, and adaptability. We'll study every scrap of data we can get, find their weaknesses, and exploit them. And we'll do it alongside our new allies in the Concord, pooling our knowledge and resources." As humanity prepared for war, the Galactic Concord found itself in turmoil. Centuries of careful diplomacy and balance were being appended in the face of this new threat. Some species, like the warlike Vokthor, relished the chance for battle. Others, like the peace-loving Aetheri, recoiled from the very idea of large-scale conflict. In a secret Concord research facility, beings from a dozen different species worked feverishly to understand the nature of the cosmic horrors. Dr. Zalvian, a Zicteri xenobiologist, pored over sensor readings with his human counterpart, Dr. Emily Sato. "Fascinating," Zalvian chittered, his compound eyes fixed on a 3D model of one of the entities. "Their biology, if we can call it that, seems to defy our understanding of physics." Dr. Sato nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like they exist partially in another dimension. No wonder our weapons have little effect. We're not hitting their entire being." As they worked, an alarm blared through the facility. The lead researcher, a multi-limbed Caxtali named Morovan, slithered into the room. "We've just received word. A cosmic horror has been spotted heading for the Lyra 7 colony. It's a joint human Concord settlement." Dr. Sato's eyes widened. "But they're not prepared for an attack. The planetary defenses aren't fully operational yet." Then, Zalvian said grimly, "This will be our first real test." In orbit around Lyra 7, a ragtag fleet of human and Concord ships assembled. The UES Dauntless, a state-of-the-art human destroyer, hung in space alongside the massive Vokthor dreadnought Unyielding Fang. Smaller vessels from half a dozen species formed a defensive screen around the planet. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Miguel Reyes watched the long-range sensors with growing dread. "Contact in 5 minutes. All hands to battle stations. May whatever gods are out there watch over us." The cosmic horror that emerged from warp was even more terrifying in person than in the grainy transmissions. It dwarfed the largest ships in the defense fleet, its surface rippling with otherworldly energies. Tentacle-like appendages, each the size of a frigate, lashed out at the assembled ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Reyes barked. The Dauntless rolled and weaved, narrowly avoiding the entity's attacks. Around them, other ships weren't so lucky. A Zicteri cruiser vanished in a flash of impossible light, while 2 human frigates were crushed between massive tentacles. Weapons fire from the fleet seemed to pass harmlessly through the horror, as if it wasn't fully present in normal space. Reyes gritted his teeth in frustration. "Nothing's working. We need a new strategy. Fast." On the Unyielding Fang, Vokthor Commander Grok watched the battle with growing rage. "Enough of this," he snarled. "If our weapons won't work, we'll use the oldest weapon of all. Helmsman, set a collision course." The massive Vokthor ship surged forward, its engines pushing to maximum power. It slammed into the cosmic horror with devastating force. For a moment, it seemed to have an effect. The entity's form rippled and distorted, but then, with horrifying speed, it began to absorb the Unyielding Fang, pulling the ship into its own mass. Reyes watched in horror as the dreadnought disappeared. But in that moment of sacrifice, he saw something. A flicker, a momentary weakness in the horror's defenses. "All ships," he broadcast, "focus fire on these coordinates. Helm, take us in close. We're going to try something crazy." The Dauntless dove towards the cosmic horror, weaving through its thrashing tentacles. Other ships followed, concentrating their fire on the spot Reyes had identified. As they drew closer, Reyes gave his next order: deploy the warp core. His crew looked at him in shock, but complied. The ship's warp core, the heart of its faster-than-light drive, was ejected towards the weakened spot on the horror surface. All ships, clear the area, Reyes ordered. As the fleet scattered, he took a deep breath. Detonate the core. The explosion that followed was like nothing any of them had ever seen. The warp core, designed to bend the fabric of space-time, created a localized rift that tore into the cosmic horror. For the first time, the entity seemed to feel pain. It writhed and twisted, its form destabilizing. Reyes saw his chance. All ships, concentrate fire on the rift. Give it everything you've got. The combined firepower of the remaining fleet poured into the wound they'd opened in the horror's defenses. Slowly, agonizingly, the massive entity began to come apart. With a final, silent scream that seemed to echo in the minds of all present, the cosmic horror dissolved into nothingness. As the dust settled, the fleet took stock of their losses. Over half their ships were gone, and Lyra 7's orbital infrastructure was in ruins. But they had done it. They had killed one of the seemingly invincible horrors. Captain Reyes slumped in his chair, exhaustion overtaking him. His communications officer turned to him, eyes wide. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from all over Concord space. Word of our victory is spreading. They're calling you a hero." Reyes shook his head. "No heroes here. Just beings doing what needs to be done to survive." He straightened up, his voice gaining strength. "Get me a channel to Concord High Command and Earth. They need to know what happened here and how we did it. This is just the beginning." As news of the victory at Lyra 7 spread, a wave of hope washed over the galaxy. Humanity and the Concord had faced the nightmare and survived. But all knew that more horrors were out there, and the war was far from over. In the halls of power on Earth and across Concord space, leaders began to realize that survival would require more than just military might. It would take cooperation on a scale never before seen, combining the unique strengths and technologies of every species. The galaxy was changing. Old rivalries were being set aside in the face of extinction. And at the heart of it all, humanity found itself in a position no one could have predicted as the catalyst that might just save them all. Unlikely alliances form. In the wake of the Battle of Lyra 7, the galaxy was abuzz with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The victory had proven that the cosmic horrors could be defeated, but the cost had been staggering. As reports of more horrors approaching populated systems flooded in, it became clear that a unified response was needed. On Earth, the United Nations had convened an emergency session to discuss the crisis. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as Fleet Admiral Kira Yoshida delivered her report. "The good news is that we now know these entities can be killed," Yoshida said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "The bad news is that our current method is far from efficient. We lost over half our fleet to take down a single horror." The UN Secretary-General leaned forward, his face grave. "What do you propose, Admiral?" Yoshida took a deep breath. "We need to work with the Concord, pooling our resources and knowledge. Humanity's adaptability combined with their advanced technology might be our only shot at developing weapons capable of taking these things down without sacrificing entire fleets." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Cooperation with alien species on such a scale was unprecedented. But faced with extinction, old fears and prejudices seemed trivial. The vote was nearly unanimous. Earth would commit fully to a joint defense effort with the Galactic Concord. Meanwhile, in the sprawling space station that served as the headquarters for the Concord High Council, a similar scene was unfolding. Species that had been bitter rivals for centuries found themselves reluctantly agreeing to set aside their differences in the face of annihilation. High Counselor Drek of the Vokthor, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, addressed the assembly. "The humans have proven their worth in battle. Their tactics, while unorthodox, are effective. I propose we integrate their forces with our own. Archivist Lorena of the Aethery chimed in, her ethereal form pulsing with excitement. Not just their military. We should open all channels of scientific and cultural exchange. The human's unique perspective could be the key to understanding and defeating the horrors. As the council debated, Dr. Samantha Chen watched from her observer's seat, a small smile playing on her lips. The crisis was terrible, but it was bringing out the best in both humanity and the Concord species. Cooperation that would have seemed impossible mere months ago was now becoming a reality. With resolutions passed on both sides, the real work began. Joint military task forces were formed, combining the strengths of multiple species. Human ingenuity and adaptability paired with Vok-Thor tactical experience and advanced weaponry. Zik-Terry sensor technology merged with Aethery predictive algorithms to create early warning systems of unprecedented accuracy. But it wasn't just in the military sphere that cooperation flourished. On dozens of worlds, research teams composed of the brightest minds from across known space worked tirelessly to unravel the mysteries of the cosmic horrors. In a vast laboratory complex on the jungle world of Verdana Prime, Dr. Emily Seto found herself working alongside beings she had only read about in xenobiology texts. Her current project involved collaborating with a Caxtly physicist named Zorlath to develop a weapon capable of disrupting the horror's trans-dimensional nature. If we can force them to fully manifest in our reality, Zorlath explained, his tentacles waving excitedly, they'll be vulnerable to conventional weapons. Sato nodded, her fingers flying over a holographic interface. The trick is generating a field strong enough to affect something that massive. We'd need more power than a dozen star systems combined. A quiet voice spoke up from behind them. Perhaps not, if we approach it differently. They turned to see Kel, an Aethery scientist whose gossamer form seemed to shimmer with inspiration. What if, instead of brute force, we use resonance? Find the frequency at which the barrier between dimensions is weakest for these entities. Sato's eyes widened, like shattering a glass with the right musical note. Kel, that's brilliant. As the scientists excitedly began recalculating their models, similar breakthroughs were happening across known space. The combined knowledge of a dozen species, each approaching problems from unique perspectives, led to advancements that would have taken centuries in isolation. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural clashes and misunderstandings were inevitable as species with wildly different biologies and social structures attempted to work together. On the front lines, these tensions sometimes boiled over into conflict. Aboard the UES Horizon, now part of a mixed-species task force, Captain Alina Torres found herself mediating a heated argument between her human security chief and a Vok-Thor weapons officer. Your tactics are reckless, the Vok-Thor snarled, looming over the human. You'll get us all killed. The security chief stood his ground. And your rigid thinking will leave us helpless when the horrors do something unexpected. We need to be flexible. Torres stepped between them, her voice stern. Enough. This is exactly what the enemy wants, us fighting amongst ourselves. Lie. The Vok-Thor have centuries of combat experience we'd be fools to ignore. Grok, humanity's ability to think outside the box has already saved countless lives. We need both approaches if we're going to survive this. Slowly, grudgingly, the two officers backed down. It was a scene repeated countless times across the fleet as beings from different worlds learned to work together. Despite the challenges, the joint human Concord forces were making progress. Small victories began to accumulate. A horror was driven away from a populated system with minimal losses. Another was lured into a trap that allowed the fleet to study its behavior up close. But for every step forward, the enemy seemed to adapt. The horrors began to display new abilities, as if they were learning from each encounter. It became clear that this was no mindless force of nature, but an intelligent, coordinated assault on all life in the galaxy. In response, the Alliance pushed itself harder. New technologies were rushed from development to deployment in record time. Tactical doctrines evolved rapidly, with successful strategies quickly disseminated throughout the fleet. On the diplomatic front, Dr. Chen found herself busier than ever. As humanity's chief representative to the Concord, she worked tirelessly to smooth over conflicts and build deeper ties between species. Her efforts bore fruit in unexpected ways. During a tense negotiation over resource allocation, Chen had an epiphany. "Wait," she said, interrupting a heated debate between Zicteri and Vokthor representatives. "What if we're thinking about this all wrong? We're trying to divide finite resources, but what if we could expand the pool?" She quickly outlined a plan to use human terraforming techniques in conjunction with Zicteri atmospheric manipulation technology to make previously uninhabitable worlds viable for resource extraction. It would take time, but it offered a long-term solution that benefited everyone. The representatives were skeptical at first, but as Chen elaborated, their enthusiasm grew. It was another example of how combining the knowledge of different species could lead to solutions no one had considered before. As these diplomatic and scientific efforts continued, the military arm of the Alliance prepared for its greatest test yet. Long-range sensors had detected a cluster of cosmic horrors moving towards the heart of Concord space. If they weren't stopped, dozens of heavily populated worlds would be at risk. Fleet Admiral Yoshida stood before a holographic display of the approaching horrors, addressing a room full of commanders from every species in the Alliance. "This is it," she said, her voice firm. "Everything we've learned, every piece of technology we've developed, every tactic we've honed, it all comes down to this moment. We stop them here, or we lose the core of our civilization." She outlined the battle plan, a complex strategy that utilized the strengths of each species. Human ships, with their adaptable designs and unconventional tactics, would serve as the vanguard. Vokthor dreadnoughts would provide heavy firepower, while Zicteri vessels coordinated sensor data and electronic warfare. Aetheri ships, with their advanced stealth technology, would conduct hit-and-run attacks to divide the horror's attention. "We've come a long way in a short time," Yoshida concluded. "We've learned to work together, to trust each other. Now it's time to show these horrors that they picked the wrong galaxy to mess with. For Earth, for the Concord, for all sapient life, let's send these abominations back to whatever hell they came from." A cheer went up from the assembled commanders, a cacophony of voices in a dozen different languages. As they dispersed to their ships, there was a palpable sense of unity. They were no longer humans, Vokthor, Zicteri, or Aetheri. They were defenders of the galaxy, standing together against the darkness. As the fleet moved into position, tension mounted across known space. On countless worlds, beings of all species huddled around communication devices, waiting for news. In research labs, scientists worked feverishly, hoping to provide last-minute innovations that could turn the tide. Aboard the UES Dauntless, now the flagship of the human contingent, Captain Miguel Reyes addressed his crew. "I won't lie to you," he said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "This will be the fight of our lives. But look around you. We're not alone. We got the best the galaxy has to offer fighting alongside us. Whatever happens, I'm proud to serve with each and every one of you." As the cosmic horrors appeared on long-range sensors, a hush fell over the fleet. For a moment, the enormity of the task before them seemed overwhelming. Then, from somewhere in the fleet, a transmission began. It started as a simple rhythmic beat, but soon voices joined in, a song of defiance and hope, sung in a dozen languages but united in purpose. The music spread from ship to ship, a reminder of what they were fighting for. As the horrors drew closer, the song reached a crescendo. Then, with a word from Admiral Yoshida, the fleet surged forward to meet their foe. The battle for the heart of civilized space had begun, and with it, the true test of the unlikely alliance that had formed in the face of cosmic terror. Turning the tide. The void of space erupted into chaos as the combined human Concord fleet engaged the cosmic horrors. The darkness was pierced by the flash of weapon fire, the ethereal glow of energy shields, and the otherworldly radiance of the horrors themselves. Aboard the UES Dauntless, Captain Miguel Reyes barked orders as his ship weaved through the melee. Concentrate fire on Horror Alpha. Coordinate with the Vok-Thor dreadnoughts. The human vessel's advanced targeting systems, melded with Zicteri sensor technology, allowed it to strike with uncanny precision. Beams of coherent energy, powered by a fusion of human and Concord science, lanced out to strike the horror's weak points. Nearby, the Vok-Thor dreadnought Unyielding Fang unleashed a barrage of graviton torpedoes, their detonations warping space-time around the massive entity. The horror writhed, its form fluctuating as it struggled to maintain its presence in normal space. "It's working," Reyes exclaimed. All ships pressed the attack. But the horrors were far from helpless. Tentacles of impossible energy lashed out, smashing smaller ships and draining the shields of larger ones. Strange, reality warping fields expanded from their core, causing some vessels to age centuries in seconds, while others were thrown backwards in time, appearing behind the fleet in various states of confusion. In the command center of the station Harmonium, now serving as the central hub for the Alliance's operations, Fleet Admiral Kira Yoshida watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and concern. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship, updating in real time thanks to Ethery predictive algorithms. "Admiral," a Zicteri sensor operator chittered, "we're detecting anomalous energy buildups in Horrors Beta and Gamma. They appear to be merging." Yoshida's eyes widened as she watched two of the massive entities begin to coalesce into an even larger, more terrifying form. "All ships in sectors 7 through 9, fall back immediately. We need to regroup and reassess." As the fleet scrambled to adapt to this new threat, Dr. Emily Sato and her team worked feverishly in their lab aboard the science vessel Curiosity. The ship hung back from the main battle, protected by a screen of ethery stealth vessels. "The merger is accelerating the horror's trans-dimensional oscillation," Sato muttered, her fingers flying over holographic controls. "If we can match that frequency with our resonance device." Zorlath, her Caxtally colleague, extended a tentacle to adjust a set of calculations. "Yes, but the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need to siphon energy directly from a star." Kel, the ethery scientist, pulsed with sudden inspiration. "What if we use the horror's own energy against them? Their merging process must be releasing incredible amounts of power. If we could tap into that." Sato's eyes lit up. "Kel, you're a genius. Quick, help me recalibrate the emitters." "Zorlath, we need to get this data to the fleet immediately." As the scientists raced to refine their breakthrough, the battle raged on. The newly merged horror proved to be a formidable opponent, shrugging off attacks that would have crippled its smaller brethren. It moved with terrible purpose towards the heart of the defensive line. On the bridge of the Dauntless, now scared and battered from multiple near misses, Captain Reyes received the transmission from the Curiosity. "This is our shot," he said, determination etched on his face. "All ships, form up on me. We're going to give our science team the window they need." The Allied fleet executed a series of complex maneuvers, drawing the horror's attention while a specially modified ship, a hybrid of human and Zicteri technology, moved into position. At its heart was the resonance device, now humming with power as it prepared to unleash its payload. "This is Dr. Sato," came the transmission. "We're ready. But someone needs to get close enough to the merged horror to plant the targeting beacon. Without it, we can't guarantee a lock on the right frequency." A grim silence fell over the command channel. It was practically a suicide mission. Then, a familiar voice spoke up. "This is the Unyielding Fang. We volunteer." Reyes recognized the voice of Commander Gruck, the Vok-Thor officer he had clashed with earlier in the campaign. "Gruck, are you sure? The chances of survival are irrelevant." Gruck interrupted. "We are warriors. This is what we live for. It has been an honor fighting alongside you, human." Before anyone could object further, the massive Vokthor dreadnought surged forward, its engines straining as it plowed through the chaos of battle. Smaller ships ran interference, drawing fire away from the unyielding Fang as it closed with the merged horror. Tentacles of eldritch energy lashed out, scoring deep gouges in the dreadnought's hull. But still it pressed on, closer and closer to the horror's core. At the last moment, a hatch opened in the ship's prow, and a small object was launched directly into the swirling mass of the entity. Beacon planted. Gruck's voice came through, strained but triumphant. Fire thee. His transmission cut off as the unyielding Fang vanished in a blinding flash of light, consumed by the horror's power. But the beacon remained, pulsing steadily amidst the cosmic maelstrom. Now, Yoshida ordered from Harmonium. Fire the resonance device. A beam of pure energy, more focused than any weapon ever created, lanced out from the modified ship. It struck the beacon and then expanded, enveloping the merged horror in a field of scintillating light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent scream that echoed in the minds of every being in the fleet, the horror began to destabilize. Its form wavered, portions of it seeming to phase in and out of reality. The other horrors reacted, moving to assist their stricken comrade. But it was too late. With a final, reality-warping implosion, the merged entity collapsed in on itself, leaving behind nothing but a rapidly dissipating cloud of exotic particles. A cheer went up across the fleet, but it was short-lived. The remaining horrors, perhaps sensing that the tide had turned, began to retreat. But they didn't flee in panic. Their movements were coordinated, purposeful. "Don't let them escape," Yoshida ordered. "If they report back to wherever they came from, we'll lose our advantage." The fleet gave chase, but the horrors were fast. As they reached the edge of the system, they seemed to fold space around themselves, vanishing in a burst of impossible geometries. In the aftermath of the battle, as damage reports flooded in and rescue operations began, the leaders of the Human Concord Alliance convened on Harmonium. The mood was mixed. They had achieved a significant victory, but at a terrible cost, and the war was far from over. Dr. Samantha Chen, looking haggard but determined, addressed the gathered representatives. "We've proven that we can hurt them, even destroy them. But they're learning, adapting. And there are more out there, maybe many more." High Counselor Drek, his usual bravado subdued, nodded grimly. "The Vokthor have long believed that the galaxy is a place of constant conflict. But this is beyond anything we ever imagined. We cannot face it alone." Archivist Lorina's ethereal form pulsed with a mix of sorrow and hope. Perhaps that is the lesson we needed to learn. No species, no matter how advanced, can stand alone against such a threat. It is only together that we have a chance. Fleet Admiral Yoshida stepped forward, her uniform scorched and torn from a near miss during the battle. "Then together we'll stand. This victory has bought us time. Time to prepare, to build our strength. We need to take what we've learned here and apply it on a galactic scale." As the leaders debated their next moves, similar scenes played out across known space. On countless worlds, beings who had once viewed each other with suspicion or outright hostility now stood side by side, united in their determination to survive. In research labs, scientists from a dozen species worked tirelessly to refine the resonance technology and develop new weapons based on their observations of the horror's weaknesses. Shipyards hummed with activity as new vessels were constructed, incorporating the best technologies from every allied species. But perhaps the most profound changes were happening on a cultural level. As news of the battle spread, along with stories of heroism and sacrifice from every species involved, old prejudices began to crumble. Children on human colonies played with holographic representations of alien creatures, while Zicteri hives buzzed with discussions of human literature and art. On the jungle world of Verdina Prime, now a major center for multi-species cooperation, Dr. Emily Sato stood before a gathering of scientists, politicians, and military leaders from across the Alliance. The resonance device that had turned the tide of battle was displayed prominently behind her. "What we've achieved here, it is more than just a weapon," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast amphitheater. "It's proof of what we can accomplish when we combine our knowledge, our perspectives, our very ways of thinking. The cosmic horrors are a threat unlike anything our civilizations have ever faced, but in coming together to oppose them, we've unlocked potential we never knew we had." She gestured to the assembled crowd, a sea of diverse forms and colors. "Look around you. A year ago, many of us had never even seen beings from another world. Now we work side by side, eat together, share ideas and dreams. We're not just allies. We're becoming a true galactic community." As Seto spoke, her words were broadcast across known space, translated into hundreds of languages. On the bridge of the Dauntless, undergoing repairs in orbit, Captain Rice listened with his crew, a mix of humans and aliens who had fought and bled together. "She's right," he murmured. "We've changed. The galaxy has changed." His Vokthor tactical officer, who had taken over after Gruk's sacrifice, nodded solemnly. "We honor the fallen by carrying their spirit forward. Together, we are stronger than any horror." As the speech concluded, a wave of determination swept through the Alliance. The cosmic horrors had sought to destroy them, to snuff out the light of civilization. Instead, they had forged that civilization into something greater, more unified than ever before. The war was far from over. Somewhere out in the dark between the stars, more horrors lurked. But for the first time since the conflict began, there was a real sense of hope. Humanity and the species of the Galactic Concord had looked into the abyss, and rather than flinching, they had joined hands and stepped forward together. As night fell on Verdana Prime, beams from 100 worlds gazed up at the stars. Once, those points of light had seemed cold and distant. Now they were beacons of possibility, of worlds to protect and allies to stand with. The galaxy had been forever changed, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not as separate species, but as a united front against the darkness. A new galactic order. In the months following the pivotal battle against the merged cosmic horror, the alliance between humanity and the Galactic Concord grew stronger than ever. The shared victory had proven that cooperation was not just possible, but essential for survival. However, the war was far from over, and the Alliance knew that the horrors would return, possibly in even greater numbers. On Earth, the United Nations Space Command Headquarters buzzed with activity. Fleet Admiral Kira Yoshida stood before a holographic display of the galaxy, studying the latest intelligence reports. Colored markers indicated confirmed horror sightings, possible incursions, and allied fleet positions. "They're probing our defenses," Yoshida murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Testing our resolve." Her aide, a young officer named Liam Chen, no relation to Dr. Samantha Chen, nodded in agreement. "Yes, Admiral. But thanks to the new sensor network, we're detecting them earlier than ever before." The sensor network was just one of many collaborative projects born from the Alliance. It combined Zicteri long-range detection technology with ethery predictive algorithms and human data processing techniques. The result was an early warning system that spanned much of known space. "Have the Vokthor battle groups reached their assigned sectors?" Yoshida asked. "Yes, Mom," Liam replied. "They're coordinating with local defense forces now. The integration is going smoother than expected." Yoshida allowed herself a small smile. The Vokthor, once seen as aggressive and difficult to work with, had become one of the Alliance's strongest supporters. The sacrifice of Commander Gruk and the crew of the unyielding Fang had earned them the respect of every species in the coalition. As they discussed deployment strategies, an urgent message came through. Dr. Emily Sato's face appeared on a nearby screen, her expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Admiral," she said without preamble, "we've made a breakthrough. We think we've found their point of origin." Yoshida's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" Sato nodded. As certain as we can be. We've been analyzing the quantum wake left behind when the horrors fold space. There's a consistent pattern, a sort of cosmic address, if you will. It points to a location far beyond the edge of our galaxy. The implications were staggering. If they could locate the source of the cosmic horrors, they might have a chance to end the war once and for all. But an expedition to extragalactic space was beyond anything they had ever attempted. "I'm calling an emergency session of the Alliance Council," Yoshida said. "We need to act on this quickly." Within hours, representatives from every major species in the Alliance had gathered on Harmonium. The station, once a neutral meeting ground, had become the heart of the Coalition's efforts. Its halls, designed to accommodate beings from countless worlds, were a testament to the new era of cooperation. Dr. Samantha Chen, now serving as humanity's chief diplomat to the Alliance, took her seat at the circular table. Around her sat beings of all shapes and sizes, the insectoid Zicteri, the ethereal Etheri, the massive Vokthor, and dozens of others. At the center of the table, a holographic display showed the Milky Way galaxy, with a glowing point indicating the suspected origin of the cosmic horrors. High Counselor Drek of the Vokthor was the first to speak. "An extragalactic threat," he growled. "No wonder our ancient defenses were useless against them." Archivist Loriana's form shimmered with concern. "The energy required for such a journey, it's almost beyond comprehension. What could drive them to travel so far?" "Perhaps they've consumed their own galaxy," suggested Zalvian, the Zicteri xenobiologist. "And now they seek new feeding grounds." The discussion continued, with each representative offering insights and concerns. The risks of mounting an expedition to the horror's home territory were enormous. But the potential reward, ending the threat once and for all, was too great to ignore. Finally, Dr. Chen stood to address the council. "My friends," she began, her voice carrying the weight of the moment, "we stand at a crossroads. Since the day humanity joined the galactic community, we have faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. But each time, we have overcome them by standing together." She gestured to the holographic display. "This expedition will be our greatest test yet. It will require resources beyond anything we've committed before. But I believe it's a risk we must take. We cannot simply defend forever. At some point, we must take the fight to them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. One by one, the representatives voiced their support. It was decided. The Alliance would mount an expedition to the cosmic horror's point of origin. The preparations that followed were unprecedented in scale. Shipyards across known space worked around the clock, constructing a fleet unlike any ever seen. At its heart would be the Odyssey, a massive vessel that combined technologies from every allied species. The Odyssey's construction became a symbol of the Alliance's unity. Human engineers worked alongside Vokthor weaponsmiths and Zicteri sensor specialists. Etheri scientists calibrated the ship's quantum drives, while Caxtli biologists developed life support systems capable of sustaining dozens of different species. As the great ship took shape, a crew was assembled. Captain Miguel Reyes, hero of the Battle of Lyra 7, was chosen to command the Odyssey. His first officer would be Tala, a Vokthor tactician who had served under the legendary Commander Gruk. Dr. Emily Sato headed the science team, working closely with Kel, her Etheri colleague, and Zorlath, the brilliant Caxtli physicist. Together, they would be responsible for unraveling the mysteries of the cosmic horror's home territory. Months of preparation culminated in a launch ceremony that was broadcast across the entire Alliance. Beings on countless worlds watched as the Odyssey and its escort fleet prepared to depart. On the ship's bridge, Captain Rice addressed his diverse crew. "We embark on a mission unlike any in history," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. "We carry with us the hopes of not just one world, but an entire galaxy. Whatever we face out there, we face it together." With a final salute to the assembled dignitaries, Reyes gave the order. The Odyssey's quantum drives hummed to life, and in a flash of impossible light, the ship vanished into the depths of space. The journey to the edge of the galaxy took weeks, even with the advanced propulsion systems. As they traveled, the crew trained and prepared, running countless simulations of possible encounters. The escort fleet maintained a protective screen around the Odyssey, ever vigilant for surprise attacks. Finally, they reached the void between galaxies. Here, in the vast emptiness, they would make the final jump to the horror's suspected point of origin. The tension on the bridge was palpable as Reyes gave the order to activate the long-range quantum drive. For a moment, it seemed as if the very fabric of reality bent around them. Then, with a lurch that was felt in the pit of every crew member's stomach, or equivalent organ, they emerged into unknown space. The scene that greeted them was beyond anything they had imagined. They found themselves on the outskirts of a massive structure that defied comprehension. It was as if someone had taken a galaxy and compressed it, twisting space-time into impossible shapes. "My God," Reyes breathed. "What is this place?" Dr. Seto's voice came over the comm, filled with a mixture of awe and terror. It's like a cosmic nursery. I'm detecting energy signatures similar to the horrors, but in various stages of development. This must be where they're born, or created." Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared across the ship. Tala, the Vokthor first officer, barked out a warning. "Multiple contacts incoming. They've detected us." The space around them seemed to warp and twist as fully formed cosmic horrors emerged from the structure. They moved with purpose, converging on the Alliance fleet. "Battle stations," Reyes ordered. "All ships, assume defensive formation Omega." We knew this wouldn't be easy. What followed was a battle unlike any in the history of the galaxy. The Alliance fleet, though dwarfed by their opponents, fought with everything they had. Ships darted and weaved through the chaos, their weapons blazing with the combined technologies of a dozen worlds. The Odyssey itself proved to be a formidable adversary. Its resonance cannon, an upgraded version of the device that had turned the tide in the previous battle, lashed out at the horrors. Where before it had taken an entire fleet to bring down one of the entities, now a single shot could destabilize them. But the horrors had home field advantage. They seemed to bend the very laws of physics, appearing and disappearing at will. Several Alliance ships were lost in the opening minutes of the battle, crushed or twisted into unrecognizable shapes. As the fight raged on, Dr. Seto and her team worked feverishly in the Odyssey's lab. They analyzed readings from the cosmic nursery, searching for any weakness they could exploit. "There!" Kell exclaimed, her ethereal form pulsing with excitement. "The structure. It's acting like a focal point. If we could disrupt it." Zorlath extended a tentacle towards the data. "Yes, I see it. But the energy required would be enormous. We have to overload the Odyssey's core." Sato's face set in grim determination. "Then that's what we'll do. I'm sending the calculations to the bridge now." On the bridge, Captain Reyes received the transmission. He studied the plan for a moment. Understanding its implications, it would mean sacrificing the Odyssey, the pride of the Alliance fleet. But if it worked, "All hands," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ship, "prepare for emergency evacuation. Tala, signal the fleet. Tell them to fall back to minimum safe distance." As the crew scrambled to escape pods, Reyes and a skeleton crew remained behind. They maneuvered the massive ship towards the heart of the cosmic nursery, dodging attacks from the swarming horrors. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Reyes said as they made their final approach. For the galaxy. With a final command, the Odyssey's quantum core went into overdrive. The ship plunged into the twisted structure at the center of the nursery, its hull groaning under the impossible stresses. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing had happened. Then, with a flash that outshone suns, the cosmic nursery began to collapse in on itself. The horrors surrounding it writhed in what could only be described as agony, their forms destabilizing and dissipating. From the bridge of a Vokthor battlecruiser, now serving as the fleet's temporary flagship, Dr. Sedo watched in awe. "They did it," she whispered. "They actually did it." As the light faded, sensors confirmed what they hardly dared to hope. The cosmic nursery was gone, taking with it the source of the horror invasion. The remaining entities, cut off from their point of origin, began to lose cohesion. In the days that followed, the Alliance fleet mopped up the last remnants of the cosmic horror force. Rescue operations saved most of the Odyssey's crew, though Captain Rice and his bridge team were counted among the casualties. As the fleet began the long journey home, carrying news of their victory, the full impact of what they had accomplished began to sink in. They had faced an extra-galactic threat, an enemy that had seemed invincible, and they had won. But the cost had been high. Countless lives had been lost, worlds had been scared, and the very fabric of galactic society had been forever altered. As they traveled, the leaders of the expedition began to plan for the future, a future that would be built on the foundation of cooperation and unity forged in the crucible of war. Months later, on a newly terraformed world that served as a symbol of the Alliance's joint efforts, beings from across known space gathered for a ceremony. A monument was unveiled, dedicated to all those who had fallen in the war against the cosmic horrors. At its base, a simple inscription read, "In unity, we found strength. In diversity, we found wisdom. Together, we forged a future among the stars." As the assembled crowd looked up at the monument, Dr. Samantha Chen stepped forward to address them. Her words would be broadcast to every world in the Alliance. "Today, we honor the sacrifices of those who are no longer with us," she began. "But we also celebrate a new beginning. The threat we faced forced us to look beyond our differences, to see the potential in each other. Now, as we stand here, we are no longer simply humans, or Vokthor, or Ziktari, or Etheri. We are the inheritors of a grand legacy, the custodians of a galaxy teeming with life and possibility." She gestured to the stars above, now a source of wonder rather than fear. The cosmic horrors sought to extinguish the light of our civilizations. Instead, they caused that light to burn brighter than ever before. As we move forward, let us carry the spirit of unity and cooperation that brought us victory. Let us build a future where the wonders of the cosmos are open to all, where knowledge is shared freely, and where the strengths of each of us contribute to the greatness of the whole. As Chen's words echoed across the galaxy, on countless worlds, beings looked to the skies with new eyes. The universe was vast and often dangerous, but they faced it not alone, but as part of something greater. The alliance that had been forged in war now turned its attention to peace, to exploration, to unlocking the mysteries of the cosmos. And somewhere out there, beyond the edge of charted space, the quantum wake of the Odyssey's final jump still rippled through the void, a lasting testament to the day when the galaxy stood as one and changed the course of cosmic history.